Okay.
Okay. Okay. And okay, you're putting on 2 pair of gloves. Why?
Oh, keep the blisters out.
And we're going to be taking all this fat and cleaning it up.
Clean it up.
And just let's tell them what we're trying to do here with taking off.
I'll remove all the meat.
You want to remove all the meat because if you don't, the flavor of that meat will be in your tallow and you don't want that. So you just want to kind of skim it off. And if the fat is still partially frozen, it's better. It's easier to clean it. Don't wait until it's real soft or it'll be very difficult. So you can see he's just taking that knife and sliding it along the surface in order to clean it off. We did put paper down. I could tell you what, if you ever do this process, make sure if you don't have butcher paper, use newspaper in order that when you're done, all you gotta do is roll up the paper because it's not an easy job to clean off the surfaces if you allow all that fat to stay on the surface that you're working on. So we're gonna be taking it from here, putting it into a grinder, and then letting it dump into the roasting pan that it'll be rendered in. Now, if you don't have this type of grinder, if you have a KitchenAid grinder, that works. And if you don't have a grinder at all, you can just take this fat and cut it into, 1-inch squares roughly. And if you cut it into smaller squares, it'll just make it easier, faster for it to be rendered. It won't take as long to render. Todd, if you could just show them approximate size that you'd want to cut it into. And nothing exact.
We got a bag with chicken.
We're going to put everything here and then we'll roll up the paper. Yeah, we'll take these scraps out to the chickens. They'll love it. They'll be in heaven. Now when we render this, I'm using a slow cooker, so I'll start it out at about 200. You can also put it in the oven, but if you put it in the oven, just make sure you use 220, nothing more than 225. It's slow and slow go. You don't want to do this fast. You're just trying to melt down the fat. This is what probably our 5th or 6th time doing this, do you think, huh?
Yeah. This decade.
Yes, whenever we take our steers to the butcher, we always ask for for the beef fat. There is two types of fat. There's what's called the suet that surrounds their kidneys, and that's a very pure, very clean beef fat. And then there's the fat that, is around the muscles, that you can also render. But do make sure you get the meat off, because it will leave a flavor in your tallow. Now, for those who don't buy their beef in bulk, because if you buy it in bulk, you want to ask for your beef fat if you want to make tallow. You can always go to a local butcher. Our butcher's more than happy to provide people with fat. All they ask for is a donation. I don't know what your butcher does, but that's the way our butcher works in here. And Todd's just cutting it into pieces that's small enough to fit into a grinder.
So you got a couple people in the comments.
Hello. Yeah, they will.
You about the chicken? Who is it?
Knuckle busted.
Oh, Knuckle, hey, Knucklehead.
And Sebastian. Oh, this says kiss. K-I-S-S. Instead of farming nature's way. You with me?
But you don't want to comment on that.
Okay,
You just say hi,
I did.
or you just read the,
Just let me know when you want me to start making
you just read
noise.
the comment and
Let me know when you want me to start making noise.
talk in the video. If they're asking a question. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Knucklehead wants to know what's up.
Making lard, baby. Or
Lard.
making tallow.
Yeah, lard comes from a pig. And it too is a good fat. Tallow is rated one of the best fats that you can eat. It is up there big time because of the omegas in it. And it's got a high heat tolerance. I think it's 500 degrees. So if you make French fries with it and normally you're frying them at like 375, you're not breaking down this oil. It's very good for you. Are we ready to make noise?
Hold your eardrums.
Okay, we're gonna make some noise. gonna shoot a video, okay?
If you want to. We're getting rain. Finally. It's a good day to do this.
Do I want it this way? Landscape or portrait?
Just like that for a long. And you hold it portrait for a short.
Hi, and welcome back to Farming Nature's Way. Today, Todd and I are cutting down beef fat to make tallow. And at this time, he has taken the fat that we got off of a steer that we had butchered, and he is basically removing any of the meat that's on the fat. What you want to do, just to show you here, some that we cut off. When you're trimming this off, make sure you get the meat off. If you don't, that flavor will go into your fat. So you want to clean all that off. The fat is still frozen, and it makes it easier to clean off that way. Todd is wearing a couple pair of gloves to help with blisters because it's a lot of cutting. So he's cleaning it off. Now we are using a meat grinder in order to break the fat down even more, and it will render faster. If you don't have a meat grinder, maybe you have a grinder on a KitchenAid, that would work. And if you don't have any type of grinder, you could always just take and cut the fat up into like 1-inch squares. You don't want to throw huge pieces into a slow cooker or into the oven because it will take a very long time for it to render down. Todd is showing you some pieces there. So just an example of the size that you would want to use. So he's just taking and sliding that knife down in order to get rid of any meat that's on the fat. We use this tallow as an excellent source of fat. It's very high in heat tolerance. It can take up to, I believe it's 500 degrees. So if you're using it for French fries or for frying, it's fine. It doesn't break down, unlike your seed oils. If you do not buy your beef in bulk, where you're lucky enough to say, hey, I want all my fat so I can render it down to tallow, a lot of butchers, you can always go to your local butcher and see if you can buy some, just buy the fat. I know our local butcher, he will provide fat, and all they do is ask for a donation because they have so much of it. You could also do the same thing with pig fat if you want to use lard. We render both the beef and the pig fat. So now he's just going to make the chunks small enough to fit into the hopper of the grinder. And again, we do this way because it renders down so much faster because of the smaller pieces. Anything else you can think of that I forgot?
Getting ready for the potatoes.
Pause it.
A lot of meat right there.
I'm going to pause it.
See that gland?
Yeah,
And we'll run all the way through.
yeah. Good point, Ruben.
That's a muscle.
So just for you who's watching live, there's a gland in here, and there's no point in trying to cut that all out. Chickens will eat it. The chickens will love it.
I'll check your comments.
Shared on Reddit. We're getting rain too. That's from Knucklehead.
Yay, cool.
Yeah, Knucklehead said that's all they cook with, and bacon grease.
Gotta have the bacon grease there.
Yeah. Okay.
This is almost as good as the cow nipple.
Okay, gonna make some noise again. I'm not sure if this is going to play now.
See that gland?
Guess I need to put that on grind instead of stop.
It's always a good way to keep an eye on your butcher too when you're doing your own tallow. Because if you don't have much glands in your fat, they're putting all that in your hamburger. Store-bought. You don't want that.
Is that a coarse grind?
3/8.
3/8.
Chickens will eat good tonight.
I'd say we should get at least 10 quart. I'm looking at this, 10, 12 quart. Depending upon how much the meat we have to cut off, but we should get a decent amount. I don't know how many of you have priced tallow lately, but it's off the chart.
Especially grass fed.
Yeah, grass fed.
It's nothing like making tallow and your cows are outside mowing your yard. I don't know. Something a little confusing. That's what I got you here for, to keep an eye on.
Mhm.
And you don't want these blood vessels in there too. That will taint your tallow.
Again, if you're doing it in the oven, 225, if you don't have a slow cooker, slow go. This is fat around the kidney, I can tell. That's all big. A little bit there. Okay, if I mix this right.
This is a Guernsey fat. It's almost like a Holstein, but not quite as white. This is a Jersey. I think you can tell the difference. How yellow that fat is from that Jersey. I haven't found a meat yet that's better than Jersey.
They don't get very big like the big beef steers, but there's no better meat I've ever had. Okay, time to make some racket again. I think you have all the tiny pieces there now.
Another gland.
Just a reminder, it's much easier for Todd to cut this up whenever it's frozen than to wait for it to be warm. Very difficult to do once it gets melted or warm. I don't care about these itty bitty scraps in here, do we?
Well, just neat. Oh,
We'll use this bag to put the spare parts in. Yes, it makes a mess, but it's worth it. Once and done.
and you get to chop things up.
What goes next?
So we go ahead.
this because it'll melt down quickly. So it'll be mound high.
We don't get anything in this meat grinder. This Meat Your Maker. It's one of the best meat grinders I've ever had. We haven't burned it up yet.
Yeah. Meet your maker. We don't use it every day, but when we need it, it works great.
I worked a few of them up.
You have to go down and get the other. Oh.
Well, we're about 45 days out from putting tomatoes in the ground here in the lovely state of Pennsylvania. So that means if you got gypsum for your tomatoes to get that calcium in the ground, you put it on now, that calcium will be ready for those tomatoes when you plant them. We won't seed our tomatoes for about another 3 more weeks because we only leave them in the pot for about 3 weeks. Well, that's some good stuff. Because if you got to pot up a tomato plant, your harvest potential is going downhill. It's better off just to seed it in the ground if you got to pot it up. See those glands? That's a good butcher. And if your tomato ever stretches, because it goes through a vegetative state the first 11 weeks of its life, because you got to figure 5 days when that seed pops in the ground, about another 9 weeks above ground, the tomatoes are going to fly.
Make a noise, make a noise.
And in those 10 weeks of vegetative growth, 11 weeks, the tomato's either gonna have 8 to 12 leaf pods on it. The closer you can get to 8, it's more calcium you have in the ground for that tomato. If that tomato goes up to 12, 13, you're already lacking calcium for that tomato. Through that, or you shot it up with nitrogen, then you're in more trouble than just lack of nitrogen or calcium. You want your vegetative growth for calcium, not nitrogen. If you got compost to run your tomato, you got more than enough nitrogen. Plus, the atmosphere, you got biology, is what? 68%, 78% nitrogen. So if you got good hydrogen exchange in the ground, you got plenty of nitrogen. You should not have to add any nitrogen. So if you get that gypsum on that tomato hole where you're going to plant your tomatoes, get it on now, 45 days from now, that calcium will be at its peak. According to how much rain you get, but about every 3 weeks after that, you want to keep adding gypsum. Keep that calcium going. Because once that tomato starts putting on tomatoes, and after about the 3rd tomato pod, you start seeing a lot of tomatoes. They start stretching from bloom pod to bloom pod. And when that happens, it's too late for calcium. Because that tomatoes are looking for calcium, you don't have enough in the ground for it. You want that tomato to start stacking the bloom pods 4 to 5 inches apart for at least the first 15 bloom pods. If you can take a tape measure and measure from bloom pod to bloom pod, and it stays within a ½ inch, you know you got enough calcium. If it starts stretching, and you kept feeding it calcium, the other main reason is you didn't put any boron down. You need that boron to push that calcium to the top of that plant. Without boron, that calcium will only go about halfway up and stop. And when that stops, your root production stops. Early blight sets in. Tomato worm sets in. And the rest is history. And that's a piece. And then if you start your seeds in a peat moss base, make sure there's no nitrogen added to it. Unless you're using feather meal or a little bit of blood meal, not much. Because that blood meal will turn into nitrate in that tomato.
Time to make noise.
I'm gonna go back to our butcher. I love him. See all these meat cells in here? All these glands? Well, your local grocery store will put that in for hamburger. And if you're ever chewing on a hamburger and you gotta chew on it 4 or 5 times and it still sticks to your teeth, and that's not your hamburger meat. It should melt in your mouth as soon as you take a bite. You gotta chew on it. All these glands, what they ground up, are in your hamburger. And they call it gristle. That's when you want to fire your butcher.
We'll be putting this back in the freezer so girly girls have treats for a long time. So this will be the last of the jersey.
Is it?
Rest of it's crazy.
What we got here?
That looks like suet.
Yeah. That's about like a leaf lard on a pig.
And it wraps around the kidneys. It's like the purest fat out of the cow, the suet. My job.
Any comments?
Boron, what's that? Cup per plant. How much calcium?
How much calcium?
That all came from numbskull. How much calcium, cup per plant? Boron, what's that?
Boron is one of your micro minerals. That's very important. Without boron, your calcium don't move.
Doesn't move up the plant,
It
right?
doesn't move up the plant.
So where does the calcium stay if there's no boron? Does it stay down,
Your calcium will gather in its lower leaves.
lower leaves?
It all goes back to that stretching in that plant. As soon as that tomato starts stretching from bloom pod to bloom pod, that calcium line's right here. And it's having a hard time to travel up. That boron, you want that in the roots. They make a chelated boron that you can spray on the plant, but it's micro. You're looking at a quarter tablespoon to 5 gallons of water. You need that boron.
I'm gonna make noise. We still got quite a bit there.
Boron is like your boric acid, or the 20 multein borax. That's got boron in it, but you don't want to use up the drug. How close are you from the Amish community there? You might have a supplier. You can figure out where the Amish gets their mineral. You could get a good organic based boron. And it only takes a half a pound to 1 pound of boron per acre for every 10 inches of rainfall you get. And if you got a lot of insect pressure, boron helps alleviate that also. He's still there.
Yeah, he just commented. We have one real close.
Yeah, check them out. See where they're getting their minerals at. Because they might be here in Ephrata, Lancaster. We got a place called Keystone Bioag.
Yes.
Wonderful people. And another Amish guy, he's on YouTube. His name's called John Kemp.
Kempf.
Yeah. We've been to see him in person while he was talking. He's got a company called AEA out of Mansfield, Ohio. And he's into all the liquid chelates.
Ready?
Yeah. calcium, we use gypsum for the sulfur and for the calcium. The sulfur is good for the fungal. We'll run gypsum probably for about 3 or 4 years. It barely moves the needle on your pH, especially if your pH is around 6.8 or 7. You want to get that lowered for your tomatoes. We're looking at a range around 6.5 to 6.4. So if you got a high pH, a lot of compost, a lot of gypsum. About the 4th year, come back, hit it with a fall treatment where your tomatoes are going to be at the next year with just a little bit of lime.
Okay, Numbskull said we have a Mennonite store that sells all that stuff.
You're in hog heaven. Hog heaven there, baby. And boron's cheap. It's got the same price as gypsum. You can get a 50-pound bag of gypsum for 20, 22 bucks. That's good enough to do an acre.
Yeah, and if you have questions, they're very good about answering your questions to help you. At least ours is here. They're very good. Like that.
And then ask them if they got a Grow Pro. It's got all your trace minerals in it. It's called Grow Pro. You don't want to use it as your seeding, but whatever you pot up, put about 2 or 3 pellets in the bottom of your transplant cup, a pinch of gypsum, then put probably a 1/4 inch of your grow medium on top of that, and put your transplant down in it.
Make noise again.
It'll love you.
so what I'll do here is, this is full enough. And I'm gonna put a big bowl here, and as this melts down, then I can add what's in the bowl to this pot, and it'll melt down very quickly. Yeah, we still have quite a bit left there, so I'm gonna need to do this on a separate bowl. Okay, I might pile a little bit of this on here. Why not? Why not? Last piece. Yeah, the girls are gonna be at hog heaven with all that fat.
Back to gypsum if you're still here.
Is this not any good?
Oh, yeah. Wrong.
Okay, is this
I got
good?
calcium in my mind.
Okay. I better check, is this good?
Wrong, huh? Don't put it in there if it's good.
Well, I'm just asking, I don't know what you did. You might have had a reason.
Just wrong slot.
I keep an eye on him, he's throwing all the good stuff out.
I got that recipe for calcium for gypsum written down. As much as I preach it, I should know it. Why put it in your brain and clutter your brain up?
It's called memory, dear. I'm gonna turn this on. And then I'll show you what I use to skim off and filter the fat when it comes out of the slow cooker. Hard part definitely is done. Now I can put this down in my basement where I store everything, and its shelf life is like a year or longer. So I don't refrigerate it. Do not refrigerate. And I do keep it in mason jars, you know, with a seal on it. I don't want air to get to it. But just to show you. So what I do is I just use this strainer over a bowl, pour it from here, once it's melted, into the strainer, into the bowl, and then from the bowl into my jars. This doesn't fit a wide mouth jar, so that's why I use the bowl. Otherwise, I'd probably pour it right into warm mason jars. Remember, this is going to be hot, so you don't want to pour it right into a cold glass. It might crack. So I just put this on a bowl. I dump from there into the bowl, and then from the bowl into my jars. And then once it's cool, I just put my seal on the jar and screw top and take it downstairs. Mark it with a year so I know whenever it's rendered. So I use my oldest ones first, and that's it.
You still hear them, Scott? How hot? How hot?
Oh, how hot? On my slow cooker, well, let's start up. In the oven, if you put your fat into the oven no more than 225 degrees, and just keep an eye on it, and you'll be able to see that you can dip off the sides as it melts down. On my slow cooker, I don't ever go over 225 degrees. I started out at about 185, so it's not sticking to the bottom. And once it begins to render, then I'll turn it up. But you don't want to do anything real fast. It will take time. It's a big pot, so hope that helps.
Okay, gypsum.
Oh, one more thing, hon, before you get started. I am going to put a lid on this. It helps to hold the heat in and gets it melting faster, the same way in the oven. I never used a cooktop to render my fat, so I can't speak on that, but if you use a cooktop, make sure you do not walk away from it. It'll melt down very quickly. Remember, you don't want to burn it. You just want to render it down so it melts. Okay, thanks.
You can tell when you got enough calcium in your pasture too. We've already dipped the cream off this milk. Right here's the cream line. When it was full, we let it set for at least 3 or 4 days. That cream will be down to here. And we take that cream off to make our butter, sour cream, yogurt, cream cheese, whatever. But this is how much cream's left on that milk for after dipping the cream off. Oh yeah, ice cream.
Ice cream.
That's when you know you got enough calcium in your pasture for your cows. Especially Jersey. Because we don't drink white milk. We drink yellow milk.
Yeah, we're blessed. No doubt about that.
All right, gypsum. A good rate to put on spring and fall. Works great in the fall time. 200 pounds per acre. That would be 200 pounds in the spring, 200 pounds in the fall. So if you break that down to 250 square feet, you're only looking at 1.1 pounds per 250 square feet. So, you know, if you got one of those 50-pound bags that your Amish guy sells, just make sure it's mined gypsum and that hasn't been stripped with any acid. Just making sure it's organic mined gypsum. We put sulfur also on our pastures, but for your garden wise, you got enough sulfur in that gypsum to do that. Boron. We put 40 pounds per acre of boron on. So if you break that down to 250 square feet, you're not even looking at a quarter of a pound of boron. I'm showing 0.22, so that would be you'd have to break that down in ounces. Probably, if you've never put boron down, you don't have to worry about going over if you go to a quarter of a pound for 250 square feet. You can go up to 10 pounds of boron per acre as long as you got enough calcium to keep them neutral. And they both work with each other. Because if you think about calcium, calcium is your mother mineral of all minerals in the ground. But it sinks because it's real heavy. So that calcium won't stay at the top, especially if you're growing onions, garlic, because that root zone is only about an inch deep for your onions and garlic. So you always want to keep pushing that vegetative growth with calcium. Then that boron will push that calcium to the top of that plant. Your potatoes, onions, and garlic, all three of them are vegetative plants. So you always want to keep pushing that calcium up with that boron. And every time a leaf dies, that calcium will go down, back down the roots, and that boron will carry it down to the roots, and it will release it out into the root zone. There'll be little hairs on those roots. That sugar molecule will go out those hairs, and that's what feeds your rhizosphere, your bacteria in the ground, and your fungi, as long as you don't have nitrates or nitrogen. As soon as you hit that plant with nitrogen, you got to sit there and spoon feed that plant the rest of the year. That's why you should never use any kind of nitrogen fertilizer unless it's feather meal, composted chicken manure for at least a year, pig manure, make sure it's composted for a year before you use that because it's high in salt, high in potassium. Once that calcium goes down those roots, goes out the hairs, it pushes those endophytes out, which is a bacteria stripped of its shell. It will go back out in the ground. The plant will give its own molecules to that endophyte to regrow its shell. It will go out and tell the rest of the bacteria in that community what the plant needs on return. So it's like a feeding cycle. That's where they get the regenerative agriculture to come from. And to keep that ground alive, you always have to have a living plant. We're a no-till garden, So we can't really say we're regenerative agriculture here because we don't keep a living plant all the time in our garden. So every spring and fall, we'll feed our gardens back with more bacteria and more fungi, like your mycorrhizal. It will not last throughout the year without a living plant. So you always got to inoculate it back all the time, which is fine. I'd rather do that than having a bunch of grass in my garden. I'm not there yet. That's for the cows.
I need to talk about cleanup then.
So a little bit underneath a quarter of a pound of boron for 250 square feet. If you can find this Grow Pro at your Amish community. If not, let me know if they don't have it. I might be able to mail you some. You want to put that underneath your transplant. Put about a quarter inch of your growing medium on top of that. Put your transplant into it. That is a fungal feeding micronutrient that is just absolutely awesome. If you look at it underneath the microscope, it will blow you away. You can even test some putting it on top of your plant and leaving it where you can see it. Within 2 weeks, it'll be like a little fuzzy fungal ball on top of it, and those roots will come almost out of the ground and eat that pellet. It's wild. So 250 square feet for gypsum, 1.1 pounds. I would do that in spring and I would do that in fall. 45 days, that gypsum's going to release its calcium. It'll be at full peak. It'll hold that peak for about 20, 25 days. So let's say at 45 days, you got a 22-day peak window. You want to time that right, so you add more gypsum to keep that in its peak throughout that tomato's growing season. I haven't found enough yet to where I got enough calcium. You could test your spot, like in a yard or somewhere where you're growing your tomatoes. See? And put 2 pounds of gypsum in a 5-by-5 area. Keep that at peak. And whenever everything else is dead in the springtime, when it's still cold, that grass should stay green all winter long. And when it does that, then you know you're getting close with calcium in that ground. Because wintertime will not kill that grass if you got enough calcium. You got any more before
Yeah,
we leave?
just one more thing before we leave. Let's talk about cleanup for just a second. This has obviously made it much easier laying down paper. If you can get newspaper or whatever to help with your working surface. But as far as your cutting board or your cutting utensils or if you use a grinder, make sure you use paper towels to get most of it off. Do not put this oil down your sink. I can't stress that enough. It will plug up your sink and turn to concrete. So you want to clean as much of it up. I use paper towels and I just wipe everything off. In here, when this is all done, I use hot soapy water and clean as much of it out as I can, and I take it out to the wooded area and I just put it there, and then I can bring it back in and clean it up. But I can't say enough, especially in the grinder. I'll just use a paper towel and wipe this all out as best I can, and then I don't feel so bad putting it into hot soapy water to wash it. If you have any questions about that, let me know.
Yeah,
That's pretty important.
Tallow and soap. Think of a bar of soap. That's how they make it. It turns, like you said, to concrete. And it's pain in the butt. If you're a plumber, to clean out a toilet drain, whenever they use tallow and pour it down the drain, you should just replace your lines.
Okay, I think that's the only thing I have left. So just remember to use paper towels. And once this starts rendering down and gets, it'll sink considerably, then I'll be able to put what's left in the bowl in here and render that as well.
Thanks for watching,
Yeah,
everybody.
thank you.
We just got a load of wood chips. I gotta go move them. We get probably 10 or 15 wood chips here a year, compost them down. That's what we feed everything, a cold compost. But thanks for watching. If you got any comments, any questions, leave us a comment on anything growing. We're chemical free. If you got a healthy plant, insects should not bother your plants. And if the insects don't bother it, then you can start saying that plant, you can use that to treat yourself for your minerals, your vitamins to your body. But if an insect attacks that plant, you can't say you're getting that full effect from that plant because they don't have all the minerals in it. But thanks for watching.
Have a good day.
You know something? We didn't have the volume on.
Well, they had to, they were asking questions.
And how do you shut it off?
No, I don't do lives, you do.
Oh, there it is. The X. Pretty smart.